We ready?
Well, no, hold on, we're adjusting the light.
A scene like this, which is, despite the fact we have kids watching, the rest of the group watching, which is basically CG on CG, is essentially for production unit flying blind.
There's two ways to approach that type of a sequence. One is to just go out there and shoot random plates and hope that you get the coverage that you need and then insert your CG. The other is to do previs, and that sort of educates the director as to what sort of shots he needs and how the story is going to be told.
If you murk around just in going from boards directly into a shoot, it's a liability. You can make a great scene, but you're not allowing yourself the opportunity to maximize everything.
So we did what's called pre-visualization, which is basically we took this whole environment and modeled it inside the computer.
It's good to previs a shot because it's a good way to plan out the whole sequence. It really helps with telling the story, seeing how shots work together, and also plan out camera positions and see how they would work in a real world environment.
This is such a complicated movie that we really wanted to make sense of it and figure all this out before we got here, because we got to shoot so many empty shots with just a freeway or just a wall and without anything happening now. It's all going to happen later. We wanted to figure it out and help our director Alex sort through the scene. Always a challenge for the actors and the film crew because we don't have a 20-foot tall humongosaur. We've got a ball on a stick. So that's what we've got.
So what Turner Studios has done is they've taken storyboards that I created a while ago, and we started to develop those.
These are generated from little thumbnail sketch versions that Alex does, gives them to the storyboard artist generates these, we do several revisions of that. Then we give these to Turner Effects.
I think when we first got the storyboards from Alex and Evan, they were very loosely based, just sort of broad strokes, and we took those boards and started to brainstorm with them, which was really great because it gave us the opportunity to kind of be creative and lend our creative talents to helping Alex realize his vision.
A lot of times what happens with storyboard artists is that they cheat. He doesn't know exactly where the freeway is, he doesn't know exactly where the car lands, he doesn't know a lot of the details of how the scene's going to play out, so he just kind of giving an impression of how the scene's going to go.
We took those rough storyboards and basically pushed them further, figured out what sort of characters we need to create, what sort of camera angles we need to establish, how long the sequence would be, what sort of terrain we would be filling, how much area within our geographic location we would be shooting in. So it was really helpful to do that.
Well, with previs, what you have to do is usually build the set. In this case, for Humongosaur, we got satellite pictures, and we used those to know where things were in relationship to each other. So we built the bridge, we knew where things were going to be, and that really helped us plan the shot.
Brought out virtual cameras and virtual humongosaur and virtual actors and virtual car and everything, and we worked the whole scene out, choreography-wise, before we got here.
We bring all the characters inside our scene, and these are environment that we build using satellite pictures. This is actually the bridge right there. There's a wall right there that we knew we had right there in the middle of the action, so we knew how to get around it. We have animation controls to be able to pose and animate the character. So as we do so, we set keyframes, we move in the timeline, we set new positions, new keyframes, and that's how we build up the whole animatic. From the storyboards, we had a couple of shots more or less vaguely describing the action. So when we choreographed, we were able to come up with the action and how it happened in what order. What we do first is a rough pass of the whole sequence, really roughly like positions and some of the camera angles. After that, we get approval from the director, and we get even notes and ideas. So we refine it more to a shot-per-shot basics. And then after that, we just break it down into different camera angles. We add more motion to it, and we start cutting it together for timing.
The camera blocking is really important because we had to figure out the different camera angles and positions that the camera would be shooting from so that Alex was able to get the coverage that he wanted.
In the case of the humongosaur shot, we had train tracks in the back of the scene, and we knew that area was off limits because there's actually a lot of train traffic. So it really helped knowing like, okay, these are our limitations, so we need to set the shots on these angles and know the best angle ahead of time. So they knew exactly where to place the crane, where to place the camera, and not waste any time, like save time.
We had a wide range of shots so that he could basically have a better educated idea of how this sequence was going to play out.
We delivered the animatic in two forms, like as a QuickTime movie and also as stills for them to have on a piece of war on the set.
This is a little more building in some of the real world constraints of the scene, actually putting our, so we can actually see what we would see from a given lens and that sort of thing. So a little more accurate than the other version.
Don't tell Evan that actually this is all great and stuff, but this is my Bible right here.
They can quickly refer to the render frames, but at the same time have a laptop on hand and show a QuickTime movie so they can see the actual motion and timing of it. So this is the final animatic that we submitted for the director. In this final one, we work on all the cameras and all the cuts, and we got notes from the director on how to change camera angles and timing. You have to do it kind of quick and simple just to get it done as quick as possible. So everything is really rough, it moves really blocky, and there's not a lot of detail in the animation, but it's just enough for them to tell what's going on. So it is great to show the actors on set and also the crew so they all have an idea where things are and react accordingly.
What the previs allowed us to do is two things. It allowed production, physical production, to understand what it is they're shooting, because we're looking into emptiness pretty much most of the time. But more than that, it gives you a chance to actually make the best sequence you can, because once the plates are done, they're done. So by prevising, it gave us all a chance to sit around and think of what are the best shapes, what are the best angles, what's the best fight, and invariably they had great ideas. They had better ideas than my original boards because we had actual tangible stuff to look at.
The final sequence was really close to the animatic, except for a handful of like 2 or 3 shots that were cut out from it, but everything is really, really close to the final shot.
So before we got here, we had done we've shot the movie several times before we even got here, so, but always in the computer. So now we kind of know, we have a focused effort. We know what we need to get when we get out here to shoot this thing, and we know that it's going to work because we've already seen it.
And so that's why it's been invaluable here, because I think what we have now is in a very compact way. And every movie, no matter how big its budget, has to be conservative in terms of how they shoot effects. Our budgets are tight, so we have to be extra conservative. And in order to keep the bar as high as we want it on these movies, as much of that sort of pre-thinking that we can do, pre-development, to make sure we're getting the best scene out of it, the better. And I think what we have now is a phenomenal scene, and certainly a much better scene than it was originally conceived. And that's largely because of this previs that we've done.